Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, the CBS Sports Soccer Podcast. You are joining us live. We are coming at you right after a 5-0 victory from the United States women's national team against New Zealand. I am Sandra Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports. Joined today, as always, by my colleague co-host Lisa Roman, broadcaster and analyst for CBS Sports. We're hyped to talk about everything regarding the United States women's national team and a victory with goals. Finally, Lisa, how you doing today?
We got a win, Sandra. We got a live game that we get to cover live on YouTube, which I love. We haven't done this in a while, gone live on YouTube with a recap of a match. And it's like gearing up, right, for the NWSL season to come, for everything. But I like this. I liked what we saw from the team, from the U.S. team today. We're going to dive into it. But how are you today?
I'm hyped. It has been a little while since we've done this, like U.S. women's national team specific. We're talking maybe like Olympics, right? We're going doing live recaps then. So for people who are unfamiliar with it, sometimes we go live after a United States women's national team game and sort of give you our quick takes, our quick reactions. So this is your first time joining us. Welcome. A quick reminder, you can follow us on Twitter for all breaking news at Attacking Third. If you're joining us live right now on YouTube, welcome. Please hit subscribe so that you never miss any of our content, any of our exclusive interviews, or whenever, of course, we go live. And, don't be shy. Drop us some comments in the chat. Let us know what you're feeling, what you're thinking. We love to hear from you. People are full of opinions, and I know you got some, so drop them. But I'm excited to do something like this again with you, Lisa. Like you said, it feels like it's been a long time. And we've got this game that just happened against New Zealand, but there was also a previous game for SheBelieves Cup that the United States women's national team kicked things off, right, against Czech Republic. So we'll be talking a little bit about that, right, and sort of how that played into this game, maybe a little bit against New Zealand. But it's official. The 7th edition of the SheBelieves Cup is here. It's in motion. It is happening. There has been a draw. There has now been a win on the side of the United States women's national team. They played a couple games in California. They're going to be heading over to Texas now to close things out. Let's talk a little bit about maybe how things got kicked off, right, for this 7th edition of the tournament. Probably the biggest thing maybe coming out of that first game, a scoreless draw, right? So you're looking for the storylines here. But maybe the big one, Becky Sauerbrunn coming out of that game, right? 200 caps.
Huge for Becky. You love to see that. Really one of the veterans, the only veterans alongside maybe Kelly Herrera, on this roster right now for the United States women's national team. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of youngins, a bunch of kids out there. So for Becky to hit 200 caps, that means a lot for her, a lot for all of the players that have played with her. She is only the 12th United States women's national team player to reach 200 caps, and to do so as a defender is a pretty big deal, because if you solidify yourself as a center back, nonetheless, which Becky Sauerbrunn has done, and you can consistently play and stay in that role, you can be there for the longevity of your career if you're consistent enough. Not a lot of players are, but Becky Sauerbrunn is, and she gets her 200th cap. I mean, huge for her. The celebrations, the smiles, even she was like pumped to do that. I think Kelly O'Hara handed her the 200 jersey that she got to wear and have, which is a huge honor, especially coming from a player like Kelly O'Hara, who's around 150 caps. So she's right behind there and been there for a lot of Becky Sauerbrunn's tenure in the center back position. But that was just one of the big news stories surrounding last Thursday's opening game of this SheBelieves Cups for the United States.
Yeah, the narrative around this tournament, right, that sort of followed this the roster, right, entering this tournament was the fact that, like you alluded to, that there are a lot of maybe I would say like a combo of yes, young prospective players, but also like what I've kind of been dubbing them as like next gen players, right? Like this extended pool of players that we've been seeing. We got to see, a first cap. Trinity Rodman ended up seeing some time on the pitch during that opening match against Czech Republic. They had a little bit of difficulty, right? The sort of facing some of this block that the Czech sort of presented to them, and maybe the thinking behind getting someone like Rodman involved in the mix would be someone to just sort of be a little rough and tumble and sort of go right at this kind of organized organization that they were presenting them. But congrats to Rodman earning the first cap on Thursday. It echoed similarly. It followed her into this next match, which we're going to get into. But not just, history for United States women's national team. There was, some things to be celebrated on New Zealand's side of things as well, as they kicked off their introduction to the SheBelieves Cup.
There was New Zealand has a player, Rebecca Stott, who earned her third cap actually today against the United States since she beat cancer. So this is just a tremendous feat for her as a player, as a human being, right? To beat cancer and then come back and play. I know that during the United States game today against New Zealand, a lot of the U.S. players were going over to Rebecca, giving her high fives, giving her hugs, because it's something unfathomable that she has been able to do and come back to play at the highest level of soccer for her country, competing. A huge accomplishment. It's always fun to kind of highlight these superstar players for whether it's 200 caps, a first cap, or honestly a career milestone comeback in your personal life that really translates onto the pitch in Rebecca Stott.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about how things got kicked off, right? We'll get more into New Zealand as we start getting into the second match, even maybe a little bit more about Rebecca Stott. But for that initial match to sort of kick things off for She Believes Cup, again, following all these storylines that have sort of gone into this version of the She Believes Cup. We got to see a starting net, right, from Casey Murphy. I think in one of our previews, we mentioned that we would have liked to have seen somebody like Casey Murphy, getting the start in one of these 3 games. So that was I'm sure that was the thing that you and I both checked right off of our box. You mentioned Kelly O'Hara getting the start, right, in light of Sauerbrunn getting 200 caps. But we also saw Morgan Gautrat, Rose Lavelle, Mal Pugh, Turner Davidson, Andy Sullivan, Katarina Macario, Sophia Smith, Emily Fox, Alana Cook getting starts in that Thursday match. Again, scoreless draw, 0-0 draw for both sides here. And I think an additional, kind of storyline that was sort of following this team, not even just based off the roster, but kind of maybe chasing them, right, from the Olympics, really, like through those international windows that kind of closed out the 2021 calendar, was the attack and the goal scoring and like, where is it, or what is it going to look like, or the creativity and how is that going to be developed, and how can we, see this manifest itself, right? And that to sort of have the kickoff of this game and then have it kind of end in a 0-0 draw. There were probably a number of folks out there disappointed and still feeling like there's not a lot of answers coming out for this team in terms of the attack, right? In terms of the offense coming out of Czech Republic. But I think sort of looking at all those things or taking them into perspective, knowing that out of this whole starting 11, Lisa, I think we could look at him and say, well, there's about one player who's actually kind of been in form right now, with the exception of Katarina Macario, who's been playing for weeks now, right, with European side Olympique Lyonnais. Everyone else is sort of involved in preseason, is coming off of their off seasons, right? So there was definitely maybe, I don't know about disjointedness, but there was a little bit of rust, right, that we were sort of looking at this team to maybe try to kick off a little bit.
Yes. And when you look at the starting 11 that the U.S. put out versus Czech Republic and compare that to the overall roster, it was a more of a veteran group, I'm going to say, or a group that's used to playing with each other. When you look at players like Tierna Davidson, Rose Lavelle, Andy Sullivan, Kat Macario, even Emily Fox, we can throw her into that mix because she's seen a lot of time. And then also Kelly O'Hara. There are a lot of players that have played together with the national team. But also they are in the middle of preseason, and it's different to kind of translate into the She Believes Cup and going against a team in Czech Republic that specifically in that match, Czech Republic did a fantastic job of playing really good defense and being a block and looking at their opponent and saying, what do we need to do to stop this team from scoring goals? Frankly, like they did that, right? Like, I mean, 0-0 scoreline, it sounds very obvious for me to say. However, when you look at what the United States can traditionally do against a block when they have their veterans, even if I think if we saw a starting lineup that I know these players weren't on the roster, but even an Alex Morgan and Kristen Press, say what you want about them, they know how to break down a block together as a front line. And that's something that was really lacking in Thursday, which I think is such a great test of this roster that Vlatko Andonovski has put together. The players that were out there couldn't necessarily break down the block, the low block that the Czech Republic was playing against them as a unit. So as a low block, when you have that as a forward, you need to be able to dribble between the lines, dribble at defenders and pull open that block. As a center midfielder, you need to make those overlapping runs. You almost have to play out of position in the front line to do that. And when players don't know each other as well as these players really don't in this sense, it's harder to do that. It's harder to read one another, find out where the ball is going to go, almost play those mind games with your opponents to drive one way and flick the ball out the other way to break down that block. And that wasn't happening with the United States. They couldn't do that.
No, it was tough. I think, right. I was watching. I was like, yeah, this definitely has like some preseason vibes, to it. I think if you can imagine a preseason type of feel to an international level match like that, but that's what it was for me, sort of watching it a little bit. But I think in light of what you're saying, I think that's also why looking at strong individual performances maybe throughout the match or were something that were silver linings that sort of stood out for me. So, being able to see these sort of early blooms, right? These sort of early buds of chemistry between somebody like a Rose Lavelle and a Katerina Macario, right? Kind of trying to get involved in the attack, trying to play off of one another in an effort to maybe, possibly, stretch things out in terms of that block that they were seeing. But the finishing wasn't there. That's what came out of this first match, right? They ended up out shooting, right? I think it was like 18-8, with I think 8 shots on target against the Czech Republic. But even with the on target attempts, just nothing able to find the back of the net.
It almost comes down to shot selection at that point, because yes, these players can get open and they can shoot with just 2 inches of space and make it go on frame, but is it the best shot that they could have taken? Can they find another pass to connect with the forwards up top to get in behind just a little bit closer, a better angle on goal? So I think it comes down to the shot selection and shot opportunities, because in a game, if you have 20 shots, okay, that's great, but you didn't score any. So were they really that great of shots? So that's at the point where we are. These are the best players in the nation and hopefully in the world. That's their goal, to play on the World Cup, to be a World Cup winning team. And a lot of credit to Czech Republic, because they did their homework. They are a very good defensive team. I think in this past few months, Czech Republic tied the Netherlands, who is ranked number 5 in the world, 2 times. It's throughout like the World Cup qualifying series that Czech Republic and the Netherlands have played against each other. So Czech Republic is a very good team defensively, even in the standings in the SheBelieves Cup right now. They're just 3rd place right now. I mean, 3rd out of 4th, but Czech Republic is a good team. And I don't think it takes away necessarily from what the US could do. It honestly just exposes a lot of what needed to change, which frankly, we did see a lot of change transitioning into Sunday's game.
Yeah, I think they absolutely. I think there were a lot of unknowns about Czech Republic. I think coming into SheBelieves Cup, I think for like the casual fan, right? But I think maybe what a lot of people learned about them is that even if you're someone of the opinion of like, oh, that's a lower ranked team, and that equates to them not being good, at the very least, we saw that they are a frustrating team, right? To sort of play. So that's a thing that sort of came out of that. And in terms of Sunday, from Thursday to Sunday, I mean, you wonder what are the lessons, right, that comes out of this? I think that we hear that so often around this United States women's national team, that they try to make sure that they get back to the drawing board, figure out the X's and O's, whenever they maybe come off of a game that perhaps frustrates them, or gives them opportunity to sort of grow on and learn things. And in terms of making adjustments or player rotation, we knew that was going to be a likely possibility. Again, Vlatko Adanovsky has mentioned that kind of like not minutes restriction, but they're going to be observing minutes. They're going to be wanting to observe as many players as possible. So seeing rotation, I think, on Sunday was expected. So in terms of the way the team rolled out against New Zealand, they reintroduced Alyssa Nair in net. So welcome back to the fold. First game since suffering that injury in the Tokyo Olympics during the semifinal against Canada. Becky Sauerbrunn was anchoring the backline. Sophia Huerta, Sophia Smith, Ashley Sanchez, Alana Cook, Andy Sullivan, Emily Fox, Katerina Macario, Christy Muse, and Margaret Purse, rounding out the starting 11. About 6 maybe adjustments, right, from that previous starting 11 into this starting 11 for Sunday's match against the Football Ferns. I loved it. I loved that Sophia Smith was actually going to get another start building off of Thursday match. I really enjoyed seeing what she was cooking up there alongside someone like Katerina Macario, again playing like she is quite literally the most informed player at the moment. So it was good to see her in the mix as well. And I was really excited to see Margaret Purce back in action in that front line. In terms of this starting 11 that rolled out for Sunday versus Thursday, was there anything that stood out for you more, or maybe there was someone that you wanted to see get a start over someone else, or see more from someone else to sort of kick things off against New Zealand?
On Thursday, we saw, so many Stanford players get the start, but one that I was really excited about was the center back pairing of Tierna Davidson and Alana Cook, two players that played together at Stanford as a center back duo. They play on different club teams in the NWSL. So to have them be on the same national team, get the start at center back, I liked that combination. I think it's a fine line for Vlatko Andonovski to kind of walk on, because you don't want players to fall back into their tendencies from college days, because it's a different game. You're playing against different opponents. You're with different teammates. But if you already have that great relationship in built there, can really, really grow with that. So I like that Alana Cook got the start alongside Becky Sauerbrunn, though, because Alana Cook is a player that can really grow into that center back role, and leaning on a veteran like Becky Sauerbrunn is great. I know you mentioned Margaret Purce. I have to double down on that one. Love to see Margaret Purce in the front line. I'm going to ask you about her for sure, but I really liked having Ashley Sanchez and Christy Mewis in that attacking midfield role, because they're very similar style players. And Christy Mewis is usually the creative one that can take all the risks and do all of the crazy, outlandish things in the middle of the field, because she has another player to really lean on to be that defensive block, to really hold, to balance her out. And I think with this role of Sanchez and Mewis in the attacking midfield position together, they needed to work together a lot more, or at least a lot more consciously than subconsciously, if Christy Mewis was playing alongside, say, Lindsay Horan, or even her sister Sam Mewis. And that player combination is one that could be really, really lethal. I think it took a little bit for them to get going. There was definitely mistakes among them, but the player combination there was really, really good. Seeing Andy Sullivan slotted in behind them was fantastic as well. She's a really great player. And Emily Fox, the consistency starts for her have been really, really good. She's a player that just gets up and down the flanks and whips crosses in. For you, Sandra, looking at Margaret Purce in the front line, I mean, she played fantastic throughout this game against New Zealand. What specifically were you hoping to see from her? And did you see it? Did it translate on the pitch?
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that I've been keeping an eye on, not just with Margaret Purce sort of being reintroduced to this next era of the United States women's national team as a forward, I'm looking for her chemistry with other players around her as well. And there's, again, like I'm talking about earlier in that first match, sort of seeing the beginning, like those small buds, starting to bloom between Rose Lavelle, no flower pun intended there, but between Rose Lavelle and Katerina Macario, I'm looking at Margaret Purce and who she's developing along the side with her fullback partner, and watching her get the start with somebody like a Sophia Huerta brings me joy every time I see it. So didn't get to see a start in some of the prior camps where these younger players were called in, right? But we saw a connection happening already between Huerta and Purce back in prior games with Huerta coming off of the bench, right? And connecting with somebody like Purce right away, and seeing that be able to sort of develop from the first whistle throughout the duration of their time together on this game during New Zealand, I thought was also very promising. So I'm not just looking at a player like Purce and noticing her, her technical ability on the ball and her movement off of the ball that provides different lanes for the attack in front. And we got to see some adjustments from her on, the right side versus the left side, which was also very important in terms of this player being able to be utilized and being lethal as an option, no matter where you're placing her, but sort of seeing a particular relationship between, your attacking forward and your your fullback, you know, and Huerta, I enjoyed it every way. I mean, and this match got started out kind of wild, and it started out with some of this chemistry that we started seeing budding. And yes, there's a big, everyone's like talking about like, oh my god, 3 own goals, right? But forcing own goals scenarios in this match, I think people will go back on highlights and see that, like, yes, were they own goals? Sure, of course, that's how they're credited. But were these opportunities forced? 100%. For me, Sophia Huerta, absolutely integral in terms of her positioning in this game. Woman of the match for me by far. I felt like she was really everywhere, even though her job was just to be, you know, kind of on the flank.
So 2 points I really want to make after that you just said that. So with Margaret Purce floating from left side to right side, I think the theme that Vlatko Andonovski is telling his players right now is freedom, because we've seen Sophia Huerta, Emily Fox on the outside flank, springing forward, driving into the middle. They have the freedom to move. And our attacking midfielders that we saw, Ashley Sanchez, she had a fantastic game. She was all over the pitch. She wasn't cornered or really centered into the field, saying that she had to stay there, stay within Christy Mewis, stay within Andy Sullivan, and stay in that little triangle. She had the freedom to go wide, to spring forward through the front line. And then the forwards up top really overlapping and interlacing. To have the freedom as a player to float and go where you want to go allows their creativity to be exposed a lot more, and to tap into that and be able to try different things. And I really, really loved seeing that. I think in the first game against Czech Republic, we got a taste of it. It was almost like, are you sure we're allowed to do this? Are you sure this isn't just training anymore? And then heading into the game against New Zealand, Vlatko Andonovski was saying like, yeah, no, try these things, go crazy. Let's see what you can do. So the freedom that he is giving these players to roam and go about is fantastic. Sophia Huerta getting the start on the outside back. When you look at the parallels between Thursday's match against Czech Republic and Sunday's match against New Zealand and the outside back position, Kelly O'Hara getting the start against Czech Republic, Sophia Huerta getting the start against New Zealand. Sophia Huerta, hands down, was the better player in that position. I mean, purely looking at on the pitch, I mean, yes, Kelly O'Hara has a lot of great qualities, but Sophia Huerta added so much to the game against New Zealand that I don't think Kelly O'Hara could have done if she was in that position. Getting up the flanks, being a great person to service balls into the box, dangerous balls that forced goals to happen for the United States, just on silver platters to her teammates. It's her vision, it's her ability to get around defenders, her nonstop movement off the ball to be open for her center backs, be open for Andy Sullivan, to be that outlet pass, and then also defending entirely. I mean, a great job on the defensive side of the ball. A lot of times we praise these outside backs so much for what they do with the ball, sending crosses in. Emily Fox as well is one of them, but it's also their defensive abilities. And I think Sophia Huerta, woman of the match, I mean, she has to be.
No, I agree with you. I think this is a player that we sort of seen, you know, go from being, you know, similar, maybe story arc right here when we're looking at somebody like a Margaret Purce, and it's similar. It rings similar to Sophia Huerta, you know, really primarily an attacking player, and her first crack, you know, and sort of breaking through to this national team, you know, was told that it had to be kind of at the outside back position, and not really being able to get some time there, and kind of fluctuating between teams at one point, and then obviously starting to play more at the fullback position with OL Reign in light of Laura Harvey, right? And we're starting to maybe see that pay a little bit of dividends with this national team, right? But in terms of like, I'm with you. I don't think anything what you're saying is unfair to state or point out or observe between the two games, right? That we saw particular with this particular position, right? But I think it's also important for us to bring up the fact that, like, what we were seeing from the opposition was maybe a little bit of two different games. I mean, we finally saw a game where this team broke through, right? Hey, here are the goals. We saw the goals happen. We're looking for them. They're like, finally, they're here. But it's a little, for me, it's a little bit of a mixed bag, right? Are there answers to those questions still? I don't really know. And I don't really think so, especially not with just one game. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag for me. We still learned, I think, a lot of things, but I don't know if we have a lot of answers still, because when we're looking at the game on Thursday with Czech Republic to New Zealand. I mean, part of why these goals were happening was because a team like New Zealand, unlike the Czech Republic, were giving the space. There were just opportunities for this, attacking group to kind of expose those areas, which was completely different from what we were seeing against, the Czech Republic. They were frustratingly organized, right?
Yes.
And so that's how we ended up sort of seeing and playing out the 0-0 draw. And then with something like a 5-0 scoreline, where we're noticing that 3 of those goals in the first half are coming off of, forced own goals. It's a little bit different, right? When you're thinking about what the tactics the United States women's national team was presented with on Sunday versus Thursday. I think at one point when that third kind of forced own goal kind of came in at just before halftime, right? Maybe just after the half hour mark, there was like this whipped ball in from Purse that obviously gets deflected into goal, and this this sort of like smirk that was like on the face of like Sophia Smith, who was trying to make this alternative run, right, just in case this ball came her way. But like this smirk on her face, it was like unbelievable, which I think us as viewers in the audience were kind of thinking the same thing. We're like, no way. We were like, no way did this just happened. Like we all thought probably 2 things. We thought, no way that just happened again. And number 2 was like, is this defender okay? Like that's a tough day at the office. Shout out to Michaela Moore. That is not an easy day, to have on the highlight reel at all.
My heart just hurts for her.
Oh my God. We ended up seeing her get, subbed out, because of that. And I think my reaction to it, I was just like, honestly, same. Like I would have been like, I'm done. Like I'm done. Just pull me from the first one. It's tough to be out there.
It's almost such like a hard call to make in that position, because after the first one, okay, like you feel pretty crappy, but you get yourself back up and you keep going. I mean, and then for it to happen again in such a short span of time, it's almost like you need to stay on the page, just redeem yourself a little bit and say, I do know how to play this sport, because you can get so self-conscious about that. And just, it's so painful. That was so painful to watch. Blessings to her. It will get better. You will be okay.
For sure.
It's will be okay more. Right? You're a very good player.
You got to have the quick what is it they say? They always have the short memory from a game like that, because there's still a game in hand for all of these teams, right? Still playing in SheBelieves Cup. In terms of the second half, they just added to the goal scorer. This time we actually got to see some finishing happen. We got to see some actual credited goals to the United States women's national team. Again, more adjustments in halftime. We saw Lynn Williams and Ashley Hatch come into play. Ashley Hatch scoring just 5 or 6 minutes after being subbed in. Again, beautiful service from Sophia Huerta to sort of just like put it on a dime and have Hatch sort of head it away. And then late into stoppage time, Mallory Pugh, who was also an attacking substitution in the second half, just adding to the scorelines and making it an official full high 5 for the United States women's national team, with a goal in the 93rd minute, right? 3rd minute.
Yeah, 93rd.
Time there. So they ended up closing out this game with goals that could actually be credited, right? To themselves, right? Hatch assisted by Huerta, and then having Pugh get in there with a final goal there. So obviously 2 different results, 2 different games,
really.
Quite frankly, in terms of what the team was presented with. So I'm a little bit curious as to what we're going to see next with Iceland.
From Ashley Hatch a lot. I mean, subbing into the game, that's, her history and her record with the United States women's national team, that's kind of what she does. I think the U.S. tweeted out something like November 27th, she scores 24 seconds after kickoff. November 30th, Hatch scores 3 minutes and 16 seconds after kickoff. And then today in the SheBelieves Cup against New Zealand, Ashley Hatch scoring 5 minutes and 12 seconds after entering the match. So she's quick. She knows what she wants. And even coming in off the bench, she can make that big impact. It's really fun to watch. I think Mallory Pugh had a good second half as well. I mean, I think my biggest takeaways from these 2 matches were the forwards and their ability to do very different things from each other that all work together to be the end result. I think Sophia Smith had a fantastic game against Czech Republic. Although she didn't get on the score sheet, she found what was working, getting the ball at her feet, dribbling with speed. We know that Margaret Purse is very, very lethal with the ball. involved in the first 3 goals, frankly, in the first half of this match against New Zealand, and technically should have given the one, but it was an own goal. But she made those happen. And despite the own goals, like, stat sheet is really hard to look at for this game against New Zealand, because the casual fan's going to look at it and see 5-0 and say, oh, great, the US is on their stuff. Like, they're always on.
They're back at it.
And then when you look at it more detailed, you're like, oh, wait, 3 own goals in the first half. But when you watch the game, you realize that they were really products of the United States putting high pressure on, getting good looks, sending very dangerous crosses into the box, making runs that made visibility very difficult for defenders to get their bodies in the right position and to clear the balls out. So it was almost like the domino effect of the United States that ultimately pushed them into the second half and allowed breakthrough goals. I'm going to call them from Ashley Hatch and Mallory Pugh to really close this one out, right? And finally get a U.S. in 2022. A U.S. player on the score sheet for notching goals away.
Gosh, way to hear you put it like that. I'm like, oh man, that's right. These are the first games of 2022. So now they could say that, like, check that box off for the year, the short-term goal.
It was dangerous. It took the first game and then the first half of this second match in order to actually get a United States player with the goal.
Speaking, right? Although I'm going to make an argument. I'm going to make a case for that early second goal, because you had Huerta whip this ball in, and it does go off but it also goes off Moore's arm. So I'm like, are you really going to count that if it's going off of an arm? But hey, we'll see if they take a look.
No VAR in SheBelieves Cup matches. That's what they call it.
We'll see if it gets changed or reviewed in the future. But for now,
I honestly think it's a good thing for Purse, because I feel like that'll motivate her to just do more of those dangerous things, getting heads on the ball, getting shots in, dribbling at defenders, crossing the ball. And right, I mean, Purse is that type of player. She doesn't get it the first time. She's just going to work harder to get it the next time. So magic to come later this week, maybe.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't know if we're gonna we're gonna have to take a look at that when we maybe do our full recap of SheBelieves Cup. So one more game coming up against Iceland, and sounds like this one's going to be for all the marbles, right? So there's still something up for grabs, right? We got Iceland with a win, and we got United States with a win and a draw. So we'll see what happens on the final day of match day for SheBelieves Cup. That's all we got for everybody today. We want to thank you all, as always, for joining us. As of the rankings right now, Czech Republic and Iceland are currently playing at this moment. We've got United States leading the group right now with 4 points, Iceland with 3, Czech Republic with 1 point, and New Zealand at the bottom of this round robin style tournament with 0 points. We'll see how everything shakes out on the final match day. Everyone be safe. You can follow us on Twitter at Attacking Third for more. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere you listen to your podcast shows. You can leave us a 5-star review now on Spotify. And if you have any questions for us, you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with your questions, and Lisa and I will answer it during a mailbag segment. You can also subscribe to us as video. So go ahead and hit subscribe on YouTube and youtube.com/Attacking Third. And we will be back with more. We're actually going to be back tomorrow with our Chicago Red Stars team preview. We have full previews for all 12 clubs in NWSL ahead of their during their preseason. So check them out with us. For Sandra Herrera and Lisa Roman, this was Attacking Third.